Let's see where we're all at. Sure, everybody will be here shortly. And we can get started. That's Fabian.
Testing.
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Hold on.
Just 2.
There we go.
All right, Ico's about to be logged in. And where's Buckaroo?
That was the wrong button. Oh. Bro, what is going on?
You have struggles or what?
Huh?
Are you having some struggles?
No, there's like this. I swear to God, there's a Juiceberg that shows up in my chat, and like I swear he has like a sixth sense for whenever you're coming around, and every time he sees you, he's like, "When's the JQ debate? Fuck Admiral Gibbs. He supports Ukraine. He's with the Jews." And it's like he'll be like dead silent, and I won't see him for like 2 streams, and then the moment you pop on screen, he'll like pop up out of nowhere and be like, "Fuck him."
I got this guy that comes in.
Spot by the Jews.
Yeah, I got this guy that comes in. His name is Kadarius or something. I think he's got a new name now. It's what is it? What he followed me? Greasy Carpaccio. All right, and he fucking comes in every day and tells me how I'm gonna get beat up and like have Bosch like kiss me on the mouth. Like every single day, and then some days if that doesn't work, he tells me I have a handler, and I'm like, man, I really would like one of these handlers that they're talking about that could pay me some money. I wouldn't mind some Jew gold. You know, where's that at?
For sure. I would like. It's like I everybody has a price. You know, I'm pretty principled, so my price is pretty fucking high. You know, but God, would I love a hand? Like if you could buy me off, you know. Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
I could find a way to take some money, and you know, y'all say your point of view. I'm sure if we could come to some sort of agreement, Israel, come on, help me out here. I probably wouldn't even be that much.
You know, I know I'm expensive. I'm not a cheap whore. All right.
Yeah, just you know, I want a nice place in the new Riviera of the Middle East.
The new Riviera? You talking about Gaza after Trump turns it into glass?
You're talking about the Gaza, bro. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Hello.
That's wild.
Just give me a new penthouse at the top of the merge a Trumpa. You know.
What's happening?
I was saying what
we're talking about. What our price would be to be bought out.
Mine was the new penthouse.
For what?
Of you know, to
become a grifter.
Yeah, for the Jews specifically. I told them that they
much less interesting.
Yeah, they could buy me a room at the top of the penthouse in the new Riviera of the Middle East. Yeah. All right, so we're all here. Ika, you ready? Chai, you ready?
Yep, I'm here. Just give me a minute to get my camera on.
Woo!
Or you can even start. Actually, I'm listening. I'm just not set up for camera quite yet.
Full, perfect. All right, so I think we talked about this backstage. It looks like Buckaroo, you're gonna start first because you're taking the hard affirmative position. So I think that'll just be easier, and then we'll just go from there. Y'all know the rules: 7-minute openings. About 10-15 minutes after each go, you're gonna have open debate, and then for about 10-15 minutes, we'll have judges' questions. Another round of open debate, then another round of judges' questions. Close another short round of open, and then 3-minute closings. All right, let's get this going. I know some people are on a timetable. Everybody ready? All right, everybody. Mm-hmm. So today we are doing the DCS. We're doing the should welfare exist in America. I'll let everybody introduce themselves, and then we'll kick it off. Buckaroo, tell everybody who you are, where you're from, what's good with you.
Yo, I'm Big Papa Buckaroo. I argue, I yap, I do something in between as well. I love politics. I'm a leftist. I love welfare.
Fantastic. I'm sure we'll get into it. Chai, who are you? What are you doing? Why are you
Sorry, I
here?
have to do my evil call.
You're muted. Okay. Well, while she figures that out, Fabian, why don't you go tell us who you are, what you do, why you're here?
Oh, I was muted. Fuck.
There you go.
All right, now you can Chai, and then Fabian. Go ahead, Chai. Tell us why you're here, and then
Hi, I'm Chai. It's not about me, but you can find me here.
fantastic.
Girl,
Fa-
it's always about you.
Fabian.
No, it's not about me.
Yeah, I am Fabian Liberty, or you can just call me Scott. Google Fabian Liberty. I'm primarily on YouTube and Zitter, Twitter, X, whatever they want to call it these days. It's just they should have just kept Twitter. Anyways, I'm an anarcho-capitalist, anarcho-objectivist more so these days, and come to my channel to watch debates or reactions or discussion of political philosophy from that perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I, Cal.
Hey, I'm a debate coach out of Texas. Probably been a debate judge longer than I'm a debate coach, so kind of fun to be here.
Fantastic. All right. We're going to kick this off now. Go ahead and start us off, Buckaroo. When you're ready, I'll start the timer.
Ready?
Go.
When looking at where we can distribute funds every year, we have to consider what function the funds serve for the different options of distribution. When it comes to research and development, the money can help innovation and development for products for public access. When it comes to individuals, the money is so that they can access goods necessary for living, like food, shelter, education, and associated costs. Now, who uses welfare? That's a great question. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Page, Steve Ballmer, and Sergey Brin are among the many beneficiaries of welfare. While Musk got a direct $465 million loan to open the first Tesla manufacturing plant, while others benefited from the technology funded by the state. Other than businesses, about 20% of the yearly budget, or 9% of our total GDP, went towards supporting the people. Welfare is a net positive for society. From each according to their ability, to each according to their need. Welfare allows society to provide people what they need, especially when they don't have access otherwise. And if society at large can afford to help those who do not have their needs met, we ought to. Society is more stable when we are pro-social and cooperative. We care for those who are weaker instead of concentrating what we have to those who are stronger, we see more stability socially and economically. Life, liberty, freedom of movement, and property are natural rights that every individual has, no matter the economic or governmental system. According to John Locke, the preservation of humanity should be our primary objective. With this in mind, we must ask ourselves, how is the willing perpetuation of a system that leaves people without access to housing or medicine preserving our humanity? Our current system promotes the regular violation of our natural rights with no regards to our lives. When we refuse welfare for those who are unable to work, we are violating their right to move freely and be healthy, which violates the non-aggression principle, a cornerstone of libertarianism. Through this lens, we can see how our support of the current system is, in part, reinforcing this harmful mechanism and how we may be victims of it ourselves. The prioritization of corporate profit over the people is what allowed companies like DuPont Chemicals, the creator of Teflon, to create microplastic. This forever chemical is innovative, but with dire effects. It has now been found in over 1,300 different species and has been even located in the umbilical cord and placenta of a newborn child. It is thought to accumulate in the liver, and many of the workers of the facility had repeated exposure to the toxic fumes. They would go home sick and stay sick for days on end. But don't worry. While they may not believe in sharing the publicly owned good that is money, they sure believe in sharing the burden of their reckless dereliction. They also released toxic fumes into the atmosphere and poured hazardous chemicals into public waterways for 6 long years. Thank God. Over that time, animals drinking the water would waste away where they stood, eventually meeting a miserable death. The company, along with a few others, was eventually required to pay out $110 billion for damages, 80% of which went towards the air pollution alone. Companies view you in the same way they view those cows, replaceable livestock. Just think about it for a moment. How many times have you had your natural rights threatened by the system for no reason other than someone else's profit? When was the last time your supervisor tried to push you to work a little longer than you wanted to, or without proper safety precautions? Hell, when was the last time you cooked an egg? We have all had countless interactions with the government and corporations alike. The former sees us as a constituent, an individual with inalienable rights that ought to be protected. The latter simply sees us as a thoughtless consumer, a guinea pig to slop up whatever new potion they've mixed. Now, a universal rights promoting a system which denies these rights is always going to violate the non-aggression principle. This is why I believe that focusing the economy on corporations as opposed to the people who the government serves, is inherently antisocial, is inherently immoral, and is violating our natural rights. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you so much. Just reset this. And Fabian, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This should be a fun night, and I appreciate the opportunity. So I'm surprised that we have so much agreement. Right, the topic is, whether or not we should have welfare, and obviously I am deeply against corporate welfare. That was described. So
welfare,
it looks like I've kind of already won the debate, but continuing on. Yeah. So
I mean, we're talking about all welfare,
what is
right?
Hold
right?
on.
So
let
what
him finish
is?
Sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
So the main thing that we're discussing here is welfare, and it is true that we often focus on welfare queens or the welfare trap or things of that nature. But when we are discussing our debt, when we are discussing the payments that are made via taxation, we are talking about welfare. There is this kind of like Mott and Bailey thing that many politicians do, where they talk about the military budget, or they talk about public education, or they talk about infrastructure, or they talk about foreign aid and things of this nature, which of course foreign aid is technically a form of welfare. But really what we have to understand is that somewhere between 40 to 60% of all of the money that you make is taxed. Either it's taxed directly as an income tax, or taxed through property taxes, or taxed through inflation because the Federal Reserve is, engaged in quantitative easing, or purchasing of large bonds to have the debt. And overwhelmingly, somewhere between, if you count the 13% that we're currently paying on the national debt, which is interest payments on the debt, about 74% of all taxation, which is about half of all of the money that you make, goes towards welfare. When we are talking about our budget deficit, when we are talking about $37 trillion in debt, when we are talking about the dollar being debased to such a degree that you can no longer afford a home, what we are talking about is welfare. Welfare is the reason you can't buy a fucking home. Welfare is the reason that our economy is in such shambles compared to what the boomers and even Gen X were able to do. Now, let's just look at the numbers. Let's personalize this just a little bit. So, let's say you're making $20 an hour right now. Well, 7.75% of your paycheck is going towards Social Security and Medicare alone. Okay. But the thing that they don't tell you, or the least people don't realize, is that payroll taxes mean that the company also has to pay that 7.75. So it costs the company $21.50 to give you a paycheck of $20 an hour. And you're losing $1.55 per hour. So what does that mean realistically? That means every hour that you work, the government is taking $3.10 away from you. If you're working an 8-hour day, that means the government is taking $24.80 away from you. And this is just Social Security and Medicare. Mind you, this is not TANF. This is not, local programs. This is not, whatever other NGO that is being funneled hundreds of millions of dollars to former congressmen to take care of the homelessness situation because they sit on the board that determines that, or all of these other forms of welfare. This is just Social Security and Medicare. If you're working 40 hours a week, they're taking $124 away from you. That's $500 a month. That's $6,448 a year. That is what the government is taking from you when they say welfare. I know that there are a lot of people that care about taking care of their fellow man, or taking care of homeless situations, or taking care of the sick and the elderly. But the cost of this is $500 a month out of your budget. And I know that there are a lot of people here that can't afford a home right now. But if they had $500 a month, they could afford a home. If they could put $500 a month in the stock market, they would be multi-millionaires by the time that they were able to retire. That is what the cost of continuing this welfare scam that traps people in poverty is. 21.3% of Americans are on welfare, according to the latest data. 56% stop after 1 year, 70% stop after 2 years, and about 90% stop after 5 years. So it sounds like welfare works. It gets people out of poverty. It allows them, a few years on our dime of our $500 a month, and then they go out and they become productive members of society. Problem is when we look at things like TANF, we know that within 1 year of getting off of TANF, 45% of people return to TANF. And within 5 years of getting off of TANF, 70% of people return to TANF. The welfare trap is visible in the data. When we look at job works programs, so that, that's not Social Security and Medicare, other things, when your taxes are taken for job works and job training programs, studies show that job training programs get people less jobs than people just in the market looking for a job. We are spending taxes to train people to get a job, and it is less effective than people that simply don't use the program. This is a horrendous system of theft. Now, it is a violation of our natural rights because it's a violation of our private property rights. This concept of the pursuit of happiness, or, our ability to flourish as a natural right, is not a natural right that comes from anyone. It's not even described by Locke or any of the founding fathers, or even the utilitarians in such a way. But welfare has done so much worse than that. Welfare has destroyed the male provider role in society. Welfare has made it impossible for capital consumption to be done by the young. It has destroyed the ability for us to be able to, help those in our community and help the elderly. It has done. Let me back up a little bit. If we look at it historically, before Social Security existed, 1 in 3 men in the 1920s was in a fraternal society. And these fraternal societies took the job that welfare currently takes, right? Before Social Security was implemented, these were the ways in which we took care of the elderly, the sick, the unemployed, etc. And they were so good at their job. They were so good at taking care of those that were needy that the APA and doctors and people in elite universities and the corporate welfare, millionaires and billionaires of the time, petitioned the state to shut them down and got regulations to destroy the healthcare lodge system. And the reason they did this, and they said so multiple times in multiple different articles and journals and communications, is that it made healthcare costs too cheap. That is what welfare is doing. It has given us a sense of normlessness. It has destroyed our communities. It has destroyed our roles. It has increased crime. It has made the sick and the elderly sicker and dying at higher rates than we would otherwise. It has given us a sense of anomie. It has ruined us, and it is coming at a cost. And the cost is your ability to buy a home, your ability to thrive, your ability to put food on the table. Welfare is an evil that needs to be destroyed, and it should not exist in the United States.
Fantastic. Good timing. All right. Fight. And as always, I will sometimes interrupt to ask questions or clarify things, and then we will go here in about 10, 15 minutes to judges. Go ahead. Find yourselves.
So I would love to know, actually, if there was more information on the people who were returning to TANF if they cited a cause for why they came back, or there were other contributing factors, or if you genuinely think it's just because they were so desperate to be paid by the government, to be like paid, a small stipend from the government as opposed to being paid more by a job.
I don't think the reason matters here. I mean, we can.
I think it does because that's
Why?
how data collection works. You actually have to understand different variables in any of the data that you're collecting. When it comes to why somebody might be going back on a federal program, they have to know why it's happening. Is it because they actually didn't have the proper step down procedures for the program? Is it possible they need to develop something new within the program so that they're actually serving the people that they serve? Or is it that, this particular individual is just making bad choices because they're so desperate to get that government money?
I mean, that's like an appeal to like the vibes or the emotions, right?
Well, I did ask a question, right? So my question was, what are the other variables cited?
Hold on. This isn't the Big Papa show. You asked me a question. I didn't interrupt you. Behave. So
I asked you a question that you weren't answering, which is why I asked the question again.
Yeah, let him answer.
I'm going to act how I want to act.
Well, yeah, let him answer though.
Okay, come on now. So again, it doesn't matter whether or not they're returning because they're, someone that just wants to abuse the system and get money, or whether or not there are circumstances in their life that that we may be sympathetic towards. The question that I am answering by giving those numbers of the recidivism rates is the success of welfare. Is welfare meaningfully reducing poverty, meaningfully reducing things that impact people's lives so that we feel that they need to be given assistance to be able to survive? And if 70% of people are returning within 5 years, then obviously there's not a meaningful growth. The whatever systemic issues you may believe, whatever sympathetic concerns you may have, clearly the program isn't doing anything, but it is costing us money.
It's actually meeting the needs of the people. I understand, and I absolutely agree. If there are needs of the people that aren't being met by the programs that they're using, yeah, they should absolutely redevelop the program so that it's adequately meeting the needs of those constituents. Now, when you're talking about the money, you're talking about the money that's being. So I did mention that maybe there's an issue with the step down. This is actually why I asked about variables. This is why variables actually are so important when it comes to why people are going back on the program, because that is actually how you understand how to redevelop the program, is by asking what exactly led to this person getting back here. So like, for example, there are a lot of people who maybe have trouble getting a job in the food service industry because they don't have the right shoes. Well, sometimes you could just give them the shoes and then they can get the job in the food service industry. It's not always about your direct employability. It's very often about other factors that influence your ability to work, including like just how to get to work. I had coworkers at Taco Bell who had to be picked up and driven to work every day because they didn't have a ride. They'd have to like ask me to drive them home every day. So, there are tons of things that can be, confounding factors in, access to healthcare, food, employment. These things don't just go away because you gave them money, right? And that's why I'm saying this obviously requires further development in the program, which again loops back to my main question that you said didn't matter.
Okay, so that was really long way to say they're confounding variables, but you didn't answer the question. So I repeat the question.
I mean, I explained
how would you fix these programs?
Right. That's why I asked you what exactly were the variables that led to people getting back on the programs, because that is necessary information.
And what is
what are you trying to say? What do you think is the problem with it other than
hold on, I want that question answered, but I also want
I've explained how it's just not enough information based off of his claims.
So that's fine. He can give you the variable and you can answer the question with the variables, whatever. But I also want the question of what does success look like? Because you say we need to redevelop it or whatever. What does success look like in your mind as well? Whenever you get whatever you need to answer the question.
In my mind.
So hold on. So
or in his mind.
So again, I'm against welfare.
Right.
So there isn't a definition of success because it would be a violation of rights for it to exist in the first place. But
any success.
But yeah, it wouldn't matter if the money gave like every single person out of poverty permanently, I would still consider it unsuccessful.
Even if it benefits the
but-
economy, even if it means you're going to have not only more workers, but you're also going to have more buyers who are putting money into the economy, you still think that would be a net negative?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay.
So again, what you were describing, and the reason you couldn't answer the question is very, when you read, you can read like Hayek's local knowledge problem and the road to serfdom, or you can get into Austrian economic theory to, look at the economic calculation problem. But what you were describing is kind of the problem with centralized planned economies and socialism in the domain of welfare that we're talking about, which is, the program doesn't work. So what we need to do is we need to spend more money in order to gain data so that we can change the program to be more efficient.
I actually didn't say we needed to spend more money. There's usually data from those programs in the first place. In my experience, at least working alongside, different organizations, I've volunteered for organizations. A lot of these places tend to be catching. A lot of these places tend to already be collecting a fair amount of information.
Buckaroo, what does success look like to you?
But again, hold on, real quick. Let me explain, because she doesn't understand what the economic calculation problem is, right? So when the government has a
I just think you didn't answer my question, and you're trying to go on this like little maze of whatever you want because you're wasting our time, frankly. Like, I'd love for you to answer the question or actually address the situation at hand, because you already said you're against welfare. You said that's why you don't care about the program development in the first place. But actually, these are all the problems with the program too.
So if that's the case, then Buckaroo,
hold
on, so here, let me just moderate real quick. So in that case, I do want Buckaroo to respond to this real quick. I would like, so what variables would you need? What is like in your mind, right? Like, okay, do you need to answer this question? I guess make up whatever variables that you need to, I guess, answer it, or like get them, and then I want to know what like you mean by like redesign or redistribute. What is success like? What is the end goal? Is it like be on this in perpetuity if it provides X like benefit? Is it like these people are get off it? Like what does success look like in what you're describing here?
I think that depends on the kind of program it is. When you're talking about programs that are specifically made for people like a step down, it depends on the kind of program you're talking about. I would say success is just having gainful employment, access to food, shelter, education. Those are what I would say are like bare minimum for success, is just the bare minimum that you need to be a productive worker in society.
So here's a problem with that, right? Is like, so let me give you my centrally planned perfect welfare initiative, right? That I, would almost support if I was in support of welfare, right? Like, let's say the government comes out tomorrow and says, I'm going to write this bill. It's $500 billion or $1 trillion, however much money it is. Let's say 500 billion, right? What we're going to do is we're going to replace all of the pipes that have lead in them in communities. We're going to be the first people to actually fucking fix the water in Flint, Michigan, right? We're going to get rid of lead in the drinking water. Now, to me, that's a personal issue that I care about a lot, right? I think that, data shows over and over again that any amount of lead is toxic, and that lead in the drinking water leads to lower IQ and leads to more violent tendencies. It's one of the probably the major reason why crime dropped in the 1990s is because we got rid of unleaded gasoline and so much lead in our paints and in our environment. But let's say successfully they do this, right? And IQ goes up in inner cities by like 2 or 3 points, and there's a measured drop in crime. The problem is that
forget what the beginning of your metaphor was. I do have to admit. Could you repeat it?
So a $500 billion bill that would replace all of the like aged water pipes, especially in cities that have a high lead content, right? So we do that. We do the infrastructure bill. We create jobs by doing this construction work. And we can see a drop in IQ, and we can see an increase in IQ and a drop in crime. We can measure all this level of success. But the problem is, and this is, just a basic economic question, is what would have occurred if that $500 billion wasn't taken away from people? Like we could call this a raving success because we took money and then we poured money to fix a problem. And then, of course, if you throw enough money at it and you plan to fix something, and then you measure that thing that you're putting money into, you're going to see hopefully some improvement in that metric. But the problem is that you took $500 billion out of the economy. Every dollar you take from a wealthy capitalist or a middle class person or whatever is one person somewhere that can't buy a home. It's one person somewhere that doesn't get a promotion at work. It's one person somewhere
that drinks water from a lead pipe.
I'm gonna let Buckaroo respond.
Well, exactly,
and
right.
Then we're gonna go to the
You got to
judges.
compare the two.
All right, yeah. I'm gonna let Buckaroo respond to your example, and then your point, and then we're gonna go to the judges. Then we'll open it back up again. Go ahead, Buckaroo.
Yeah, I think drinking from lead pipes is bad. I think if a bunch of people are being more violent and you're seeing a rise in crime and you're probably seeing a rise in childcare, in like needs of childcare, you're probably seeing a rise in medical costs. There are a ton of ways that lead in the water would be harmful, not just for the individual, but for society at large. And the ways that it can be harmful to society at large can actually lose us money as people. We wouldn't be innovating as much. We wouldn't be producing as much. We wouldn't be spending as much because people are too stupid. I mean, they're drinking the lead water, right? And so I think when it comes to issues of public health and safety, it is obvious to me that it's worth the investment to solve this issue. I also Another
You agreed
point.
with me,
Sorry.
except
I
the
know you
last
said the
sentence.
judges. I know you mentioned the judges.
So
Yeah,
But-
we'll go.
So
to,
you haven't really given an argument. You've just said it's obvious to me. You agreed with everything
Sorry,
that I
I
said.
was literally
and then
about
said
to.
it's obvious.
No,
What?
yes, I was about to start a new argument, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't.
No, that's fine. I'll moderate. Don't worry.
I wasn't-
It's not my first
Okay,
time
so you
doing
agree
this.
with me,
Sorry.
but then socialism just obviously good. All right.
No, I was just
finish your thoughts,
explaining
finish your
why
thought,
replacing. I was just explaining why replacing the lead pipes would actually be a great investment because it would be good for the community. It would be good for the economy, and that you should take that money because it is necessary. And I don't even agree that it's inherently taking money from these individuals as much as it is redistributing publicly owned utility, a public good.
You haven't addressed the argument. You've just said that you agree with me, and then we ought do this because it's good. Like it's circular logic. You haven't actually said anything.
Oh, sorry. Could you explain your
other than
argument
you
again? I
agree
guess
with
I
me.
didn't understand.
Well, hold on. We're gonna go. Hold on.
Explain
Let's just
again.
put a pause on that real quick. We'll come back to that if we need to. You can re-explain it. Let's go to the judges now for a quick round of judges questions. We'll start with iCal. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I had a whole bunch of welfare-related questions, but now I have a topicality question because the topic seems to have moved towards something that may be considered welfare, but maybe not. And it's what Buckaroo just described as the public good. But I think that once Flint got brought up, that sort of brought in those kinds of topics. So I guess my first question is for Scott. Do you consider like public works programs to be welfare under your rubric here, or even under the internal critique that you're making?
Yeah, so under my rubric, yes. Under an internal critique, not necessarily, because I recognize that when most people think of the term welfare, they think of monies or services provided to the economically disadvantaged, right? They think of TANF, food stamps, or Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, things like that. Under my rubric, I would consider public schools a form of welfare. I would consider public works a form of welfare. I would consider the national highways a form of welfare. But I understand that that's not how most people view it. To me, it's a distinction without a difference, but I'm willing to work within that distinction to converse with other people.
It seems to me, though, that at least from Buckaroo's point of view, she might be very happy to grant that because that gives her a lot broader ground in terms of what she would justify as necessary with welfare, something like that. You could do away with TANF, you could do away with Social Security, you could do away with all of that. And if all you have to prove is that it's worth it to have a public works program and get let out of water or whatever.
Is this coming into a question, or is this you assisting her in the debate? Like, what are you doing?
He's got a point. He's making a question.
Well, it's why I'm surprised that you answered it the way that you did. But that's okay.
Honestly,
yeah. Okay, so Buckaroo, my question to you then, is with every welfare program, or at least the traditional source of welfare programs that I assumed we were going to talk about going in, we have something called the free rider problem. Do you have a solution in mind for that?
I think the free rider problem is honestly a negligible effect. I think it is obviously not good, but I think when you weigh it against the benefits that you get from supporting every other citizen that actually needs it, it's the right choice. One person making a mistake doesn't mean that I'm going to then punish like 50 other people within the vicinity just because they were nearby.
What
Okay.
does that mean? What do you mean by need, and what do you mean by punish?
Oh, so when I said need, I was referring to basic needs of people who are typically seeking out government support for their lives. And when I say punish, I mean that they are not benefiting in the same way that they would have otherwise benefited.
Oh, okay. Before we go
feel-
on.
Okay.
Let's go to yeah. Just write it down. We'll come back to. Let's go to Chai.
Did you?
So clarifying off of Aiko's last thing with you, when you say you consider public schools part of welfare, and you say get rid of all welfare, are you saying get rid of public schools?
Yeah, I'm an anarcho-capitalist, or
So
more
you would
specifically, an
just
anarcho-objectivist.
pay for
I'm an anarchist.
privatized schooling?
I would abolish the state. I'm an anarchist. So every function of the state I would get rid of, regardless of what it is.
Do you want to make
And
the?
then all the
Do you want to make
stupid,
the
uneducated people
Well,
can
hold on,
drink
hold
their
on,
lead
hold on.
water.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Do you want to make the the economic argument on like why you would the private versus
I don't
public?
really want to go down this rabbit hole of anarchy. I do favor Buckaroo as a human, but that doesn't mean I favor her right now. She's kind of losing my interest. I've been more interested in what Fabian has to say for once. Like you said something earlier about how it makes the male not be able to be that like provider, and I feel like Buckaroo should have like dug into some of them, because I don't know, maybe you could have had something interesting to say about why
Well, I
you
mean-
said that, or maybe you had nothing to say about it and it
well-
was baseless and she could have tore you apart. So far, I feel like there's some chances for Buckaroo to attack you, but right now you are the attacker and she is the defender in my
Well,
mind.
That's an interesting assessment. Yeah, interesting.
I like attackers.
I guess
I'm
that-
barely talking.
Yeah, so we'll move to the.
That's
We'll
what's
move.
funny.
Well, I guess that's no more
You
questions.
don't have
then.
to have an attacking
for you.
tonality
For
to be
you.
attacking.
Okay. All right.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. All right. So I guess that'll wrap this up. All right. We'll move back to open. I guess Buckaroo explained her clarification, and I'm assuming you had some umbrance with that. Is a good starting point here. Go ahead, Fabian, and then we can just open it back up. Go ahead if you want to.
Well, I mean, I feel like I can just get into the provider role, right? If you want to get back on
Sure,
that
whichever
domain,
one.
it seems like the judges think that's more interesting.
Yeah, whichever one, wherever you want to start. Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll go to back here.
Yeah, so I think there is, obviously when we talk about roles and gender roles, we have to recognize that there is, nature nurture kind of like interplay here, right? To what degree, gender roles are obviously socially constructed for the time, especially like aesthetics, but I do think that they are based in our biology and in our differences to a certain degree, and so different genders do play, a different roles. How they act out those roles changes, such as if we go back to the 1800s, you'd see a lot of men wearing high heels because it was the fashion of like, stirrups on horses and things like that. But when we were talking about the provider role, there is a couple of things here. So when you have a large tax system where a majority of your money is taxed, then what you basically destroy is you replace capital accumulation for capital consumption, right? Your society becomes a high time preference society, which is instead of accumulating a bunch of wealth and doing things that men tend to do very good at, which is entrepreneurship, starting a business, trying to use the limited resources that they have now to gain wealth and invest in themselves so that they can have that kind of that provider role that has traditionally existed in a lot of cultures. men don't have that capability, the more we have welfare. And it's kind of twofold. One is they don't have the money to do it anymore. And the other thing is that the state is taking on that role. So when what used to be a dynamic that a community used to take care of, and that a family used to take care of, or that a church used to take care of, instead everything gets displaced out of mind and gets depersonalized and becomes a role of the state. You have senators talking about how, men are a problem because they're on their couch
providing
playing video
school
games.
to children by the state demasculating it? How is providing free school and free food going to emasculate men across the board? Does it actually emasculate them? It just seems very.
I didn't make the argument that it emasculates them. I made
You
the
just said
argument
that it
takes away a
away
traditional provider role from
the
them.
main man characteristic that they have, which is being a provider.
Yeah, so like if we look at public schools, for example.
So would you not consider that
depending on-
emasculating if it's not like their main characteristic, the main attribute?
I feel like
of
using the term. I mean, like we could, but I feel like emasculating gets
Okay,
into
cool.
like
Then we
another-
should.
gets-
Emasculation. Got it. I'm
Okay,
glad
hold
we
on,
agree.
hold on. I think I like. I just don't want to get into the weeds of that terminology, right? I'm sticking to the concept of the role as opposed to whether, because like emasculation has a
Has
different
a pussy
connotations
connotation
in
to it? Yes, I agree it does, because it is strange to
That's
feel
not
like
what
the
I'm talking
government
about.
stops you from being a father to me. I just, it doesn't make sense to me,
That's
the
not what I
idea
said,
that
but-
having like community support is somehow taking away from
they took away
man's
community
ability to
support.
provide. I mean, did you not mention sovereign wealth funds? I mean, would that not also take away from masculinity? Would any sort of fraternal society, like you mentioned, not also take away from masculinity if any of them are possible to provide for people? Like, do those not all do literally the same thing in your framework from your perception?
So no, there's a very big substantive difference between like the healthcare lodge system and fraternal societies and the state, right? The healthcare lodge system was primarily men that were, presumably in charge of the family. There were female led fraternal societies as well, even though you would think they'd call them
Cisternal societies.
maternal or something. Yeah, you're right. But that's just the name that was used, right? One of them was, the United Order of the Ladies of the Maccabees, which eventually became the Women in Benefit Association. 1920, I think it had over 200,000 members and provided job training for women, life insurance policies, and they were a part of the suffrage movement to a certain degree. But so when we talk about fraternal societies and how they differ from, like, let's say Social Security, when the fraternal society is not depersonalized, it's community led, right? So what occurs in a fraternal society is a man paid a very, very small, about a week's worth of wages for a yearly membership that would get them unemployment insurance, health insurance, access to doctors, life insurance policies, things of that nature.
Sounds kind of like
And
taxes.
what that's
Paying
not
a
taxes,
yearly
it's a voluntary association.
due to some sort of. Oh, you're not voluntarily participating in the economy every time you use your money?
I'm not voluntarily giving the state.
Why couldn't you just
something.
leave the state? If you actually had an issue with being a part of the economy, why would you rather benefit from the economy that's, inextricably linked to the state? Why wouldn't you just choose to go somewhere else where you could
The
have
state
more
is the state is a parasite on the beneficial nature of mutual transactions amongst the people, right? The reason
So why
I'm
don't you go to
benefiting
it?
from the
That's why I'm
economy,
asking.
the reason
Why
I'm
is it that
benefiting
it's
from the
America
economy,
that you want?
the reason that I'm benefiting from the economy is because I'm benefiting between the voluntary exchange of goods and services with other people. The state has interjected
the
itself to
voluntary.
steal from that. Yeah, like if
So
I
you
go
would
and
say
I buy something from
that
someone.
you are voluntarily participating in trade using money produced by the American government, correct?
Your argument is what, fiat currency good?
I
Like, where are
asked,
you going with
is
these
that
questions?
correct? Correct? Yes or no? Is that correct that you are voluntarily participating in the economy using money that was printed by the government?
I'm volunteer. I mean, like,
Yes or no?
yes.
Yes or no? Easy question.
I'm
Yes,
using
okay,
it as a
very good.
currency of exchange, but that is
question,
against my will. I
Who
would rather
has
use
control?
a commodity
Who
currency.
has the bank? Who has the bank? When we're talking about the Bank of America, well, not the Bank of America. When we're talking about who has control of the money? Is it
What?
us? Is it the people? Is it everybody who has money in their wallet? Or is it the government?
Well,
That's a nonsensical question. Like no individual, no entity has control over all money.
Oh, so they can't implement taxes, they can't affect inflation in any way. They can't have any
This is
sort
a
of
vague
effect
question.
on the
Just
economy.
ask an actual question that I can answer. Like you're like describe economics.
I mean, you could answer
You're like,
them.
what do
You
you
just
mean?
chose not to.
No, I'm asking you
Right.
to
So I guess
clarify. You're
I
interrupting
guess
my point because
I'm-
you were getting cooked on fraternal societies and you didn't realize that someone actually understood the history, that it was far better
No, I
historically
wasn't worried.
than
No, I
current
knew you
welfare
knew
system.
fraternal
And now
societies.
you're
I
down
wasn't
this
worried about
weird
that.
now you're down this weird fucking path of like, what is money? Why not just
well,
leave?
I have a question.
Like,
I have a
I'm
question.
not confused. If you want to go back to fraternal societies, I'm so
confused,
sorry.
well,
I know it's your baby. I know
well,
you love them. I would love to keep talking about them
Well,
in a minute,
that-
but I actually had other questions to ask before that.
I do want you to answer this one, Buckaroo. I have a question. You can ask your question. After so you just asked if he was voluntarily participating in the economy, right? Because of the money and whatnot. Then you asked just now who controls the money in the economy and the banks, right? And I'm assuming your implication is the government. Am I wrong in that assumption? Like,
no, she clearly means the Jews.
the
Come on, buddy.
no, yeah, good one, yeah.
No, that's why I kept saying the government prints it. You know,
So you're okay. So
why
you're
I'm not
so
just saying
so
somebody
my,
controls it.
right. So you're saying someone controls it. So if you're just to clarify, you're saying he's voluntarily participating in something that somebody controls. Is that correct? Do you, like
He's voluntarily participating in the economy, which he knowingly chooses to participate in, while recognizing there are taxes in our economy. We pay taxes. That is a part of our economy. It is inextricably a part of the American economy. It has been a part of the American economy for quite some time. So him saying that actually it's not voluntary, actually we're just stealing all of the money from the people, despite the fact that it's a public good in the first place, despite the fact that it's, a part of the Treasury's job to control distribution of money in the first place. It's just confusing to me as to how all of this is being forced upon him, despite the fact that he is not only benefiting from the economy, but he's actively talking about how much he loves it. He's saying he would prefer the country be run by the economy. So I guess
let me ask you a question then, right? To better elucidate your question. So let's say I am a southern plantation owner, right? I am of the aristocracy. It's like, 1710 or something, right? And I have a bunch of black slaves, and I love abusing my black slaves. I love beating them. There's nothing better than beating those black slaves. I'm super white supremacist, right? In this analogy. And I decide,
it's not hard for me to believe.
Yeah, of course, right? And so
you already have like
I'm going to make, right? I decide I'm going to make copper coins because I want some of my slaves to to engage in things outside of the 10-hour day, right? I give them a little bit of time to do their laundry or to do some leisurely activity because I find that they're more productive workers, and I can get them to pick more cotton when I give them a couple hours off. And I decide I print a bunch of copper coins and I give all my black slaves that I love raping and beating on the daily. I give them all these copper coins. Yeah, you got it. That's why I'm part black.
I'm so glad you know so much about slave owner behavior. I give
them a bunch of copper coins. I give them a bunch of copper coins, right? And then they start trading these copper coins as a medium of exchange, right? Because some of the black slaves, they like to make some clothes, some of them like to do a little, go gather water, and they start to formulate an economy under this. Would you say that now those slaves, they can't say I'm beating them wrongly, and they can't say that me raping them is wrong because they're engaging in this
have a representative democracy?
That doesn't apply. Your
Do the
argument.
slaves
Hold
have?
No. Answer the question. None of that matters because that's a goalpost shift. Because your argument was, if I use fiat currency, then I agree
I did not
with
say
what the
fiat
state
currency.
is doing. We're talking about the currency that we're using as a fiat currency.
In this economy because you
the black
make
slaves
money
are choosing to
from it
participate
and
in the
you
economy.
enjoy it. I was talking about
They
this
enjoy
economy.
the medium of exchange.
I was not talking about just any economy, but I would also say that they did
So what's the
not
substantive
willingly
difference?
choose to be
Yeah.
a part of.
I'll
They
let
did
you-
not
I'll-
willingly
Buck-
choose
what's
to
the
be a part of the
substantive difference?
economy
Alright.
because
I'll let you-
other
hold
than
on.
being
Why is my
kidnapped,
analogy?
other than being
hold on,
Why is
kidnapped,
my analogy
beaten,
disanalogous?
and raped,
Don't be a
Hold on,
pussy.
hold
other than
on.
being
Why is
kidnapped,
my
Hold on,
analogy
hold on,
disanalogous?
hold on, order.
Why is my analogy
don't be a
disanalogous?
pussy.
I want
I
you.
was explaining why.
Okay, yeah,
Gibbs
go
was
ahead.
interrupting me.
I am interrupting you. Go ahead. I'll let you explain why, because he asked you the question, and then after you explain, we're going to go to the judges for another round of questions because we're getting close on time here. So go ahead. Explain why.
Like I said before, the American democracy is inextricably linked with the American economy. One does not exist without the other. And because of that, I would say that being able to vote, having a representative democracy is tangibly, obviously different from kidnapping people from their country, shipping them across the world, and then beating and raping them and forcing them to work for you, and then giving them some copper coins afterwards,
Yeah,
like a
okay,
fucking,
cool.
like
So
what?
hold on,
Who are you,
hold on,
Bill
baby.
Gates?
I'll deal with the
Okay,
goalpost
so
shift.
this
I'll
is
deal with the
why-
hold on.
Hold on,
this
baby.
is
Let her
why-
answer.
I'll deal with the
this is
goalpost
why
shift.
I
I'll
fine.
deal with the
That's
goalpost
fine.
shift. I will deal with the
goalpost
goalpost.
Hold on, just
Don't
let me-
filibuster. I'll deal with the goalpost
No,
shift.
don't filibuster. Hold on.
I've
Just let her finish,
already
then I'll go to you,
explained-
and then I'm going to
Yeah,
go to
no,
the
you've
judges.
already explained. So I'll deal with the
Like I-
goalpost shift
Hold
very
on.
quickly.
All right.
Very quickly. Let me
Okay.
just deal with
You
the
got
goalpost shift.
20
Okay.
seconds.
So if
You got
I'll
20
change my
seconds.
analogy.
If we're moving,
I'll change my. Okay, well, let me go. All right. So here's the deal. So now I'll set up. I'll put a little R pin on my chest, and then on my wife I'll put a little D pin on her chest, and I'll let all the slaves vote on who
This
gets to be
still
in charge.
breaks the non-aggression
now-
policy, and because of that, I
Are they
reject
now?
this.
10 seconds.
Oh, so you just reject
This
it?
completely
Cooked.
breaks. This
Cooked.
completely breaks the non-aggression
Cooked.
policy. Do you not follow that at all? Do you not care about it?
It's an internal critique, and you were too afraid to answer.
All right,
it.
all right,
You-
fair. All right, cool. All right, we're going to the
Do
judges.
you follow the non-aggression policy? Yes or no?
Going to the judges.
The non-aggression principle, not policy.
All
I'm
right.
sorry,
Yes.
principle.
All
I
right.
keep,
Again,
I
that's
keep
an
doing
internal
that.
critique.
Oh my
Answer.
god.
Calm. All right, this time.
I
All
was-
right. This is what we're gonna do. Well, for sake of order, no critiques, judges, just questions, because then we got to get the time. So we're gonna ask these questions quick answers, rapid fire round, starting with Shy. Go ahead, Shy.
What the fuck?
That's a good question. All right, thank you so much. Give me a real question.
Okay, yeah. Scott, are consumers rational?
What do you mean by rational?
Like, now I'm going way back to the beginning of the debate because I'd like to hear about like traditional welfare programs again. When people are consuming, government sort of forces them to contribute to their own retirement plan or taxes the general public in order to supplement them in one way or another. And you made the point very early on that this takes money out of the consumer's pockets. But what it does is it redirects that money in ways that are less efficient than the money that would have been directly in their pockets, which is, I think, part of the point you're trying to make, which is, I understand that's not the principal point, that's the internal critique point, but the assumption is that money would be saved for end of life purposes or whatever it may be, and are consumers rational in that way?
So yeah, so from an Austrian perspective, they are rational actors, in so that they act based off of their desires, right? And so the argument is whenever you take money out of someone's pocket, you are invariably taking money away from what it is that they value most and redirecting it into what central planners think are better values because of, and I assume when you say rational, you mean that they, work against their own long-term interests, right? That some people, I mean, like, for example, like we see that there is an increase in overdoses when Social Security checks go out, right? We know that Social Security checks go out around the first of the month, and that's when we see the most overdoses because there's a lot of drug addicts that get, government money and they wait until they get that government money, and the first thing they do with that money is they put it in their veins, and sometimes they die. So obviously, if those people weren't taxed, right? If other people weren't taxed, maybe they'll buy dumb shit, right? Maybe they won't save for retirement and they'll be fucked in some way. Hayek makes has a poignant quote in chapter 4 of The Road to Serfdom, which is centralized systems destroy spontaneous order, right? Those guardrails kind of prevent people, I think, in a way, from becoming as rational as they ought or could be, because there is this thing in the back of their mind that says, well, the state will take care of me, right? I don't really need to, plan for retirement right now because at the end of the day, I have Social Security. So yeah, that would be my answer, I guess.
All right.
Okay.
What else you got?
But
Any other questions?
one question for Buckaroo.
Okay.
So again, going back to earlier in the debate when we were talking about what I thought the topic would be, was you asked Scott to identify various different variables to explain that sort of 70% recidivism statistic. And I understand that he didn't identify specific variables, right? But I also didn't hear proposed variables coming from you. Did you have some in mind?
I did make I made I might have made allusions to it, but just that, there are there are other costs that are associated with things like employment that sometimes you can't fulfill. So let's say they leave the program, they had already gotten employment, and let's assume the program gave them a phone, gave them employment, and I don't know, a nice pair of shoes. Okay. They go to their job, they work there, their phone breaks, they can't afford to fix it. Their shoes break, they have to tape it, they have to tape their shoes until they can afford new ones. There are just ways where you can meet someone's needs and then suddenly they have needs again because people tend to have needs for their whole life. So that's why I was asking about variables because there are just so many other factors in everybody's life that could be, making it harder for them to stay in society without additional support.
All right.
Yep.
Chai, what you got for me other than what the fuck?
So the whole like put $500 back in your pocket thing, that really rang my ear because personally I can kind of relate. Or maybe if I didn't have to pay college debt, I could, I don't know, have a house by now. That'd be cool. I want to know more about that. I want statistics because that really does kind of win me over. I don't know why the money that I earn personally, when I am feeling like I'm a struggle, I'm not on my own. I don't feel success. I don't think the bare minimum of success is that. I think there is a lot more to go into success based on personal opinions and prides. But I feel like you're not going to win with the abolish it entirely. I need to hear some kind of middle ground, like maybe a solution that could fit the need of that. Do you just tell the rich people to do it? Is it charity? Like, how are we finding a common? Because anarchy isn't going to happen, unfortunately.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain degree, I kind of have to reject the idea of anarchy isn't going to happen. But my channel name is FabianLiberty because I do believe in incrementalism. Like I'm fine with making compromises that make our situation better in the short term. Great men plant seeds of which for trees of which the shade they will never sit in. I think this is a 100-year project. And so, yeah, like I don't
Unless
think
it's the
abolish
shade that
those
somebody
systems.
poor is going to sit under, in which case we should definitely not allow that, right?
But that is the reason that
Let
I was
them
bringing
burn.
up for. That is
Like,
the reason
I
I was
like
bringing
helping
up
the poor when
fraternal
I actively
societies.
do it. You know what I mean? But like
Yeah,
passively, I
like,
don't.
right, but that's the thing, right? Like when you go out, right? So like I do this thing and I know you do it as well. When you go out and you like just let's say go to McDonald's, this is what I do. I grab some cheeseburgers and some chicken sandwiches and some bottles of water, throw them in a backpack, and I go and have conversations with people. And I gain insight, I gain wisdom. There's an exchange there. I feel better because I see the person that I'm with and I can give them something in the immediacy that they need. Maybe I'm enabling them, maybe it's not the best behavior. But this impersonal thing, I think, destroys that meaning that I think so many of us are looking for, and that is what we used to have. We used to have, things like the Security Benefit Association, which was a fraternal society that specifically focused on helping the elderly and helping people in like nursing homes and things like that.
Isn't the
But they're your
elderly the
family
majority
members,
of
they're your
people who are
community
receiving
members.
welfare benefits in the first place? If you're talking about benefits for like health care and for being unemployed, isn't it elderly people? When I worked at UPS a bit
Yes,
ago.
yes,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
so yeah, and they can't work. The reason that a lot of
We're
the
just gonna
people
open
on
now. That's
welfare.
fine. It's perfect for segue. Go
Okay.
ahead.
The reason a lot of I
Yeah,
have
but
two
that's not
things.
my argument,
First,
right?
a reason a lot of the people are on welfare is just because they can't work for some reason or another because they're elderly or their children and they still need to access to food and medicine and school. And because of that, we can redistribute the funds so that they have access to those things. But I wanted to mention, I worked at UPS for just over a year. I was loading trucks. It was
I did
a
the same
really
job,
hard job.
preload.
Nice. Yeah, I did preload. What the fuck? Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
And when I
Building
worked
bridges.
there, I had a guy working across from me, and it really outlined for me like yet another reason why we should be supporting everybody. In some regard, he was 66 years old. He had a PhD in theology. His son was dying of cancer. He couldn't visit him. He couldn't spend the last months of his son's life with him. And he genuinely worried that he was going to die at work regularly. He would say,
Right.
I think they're trying to kill me, because he would just be so slammed, right? And so to me, things like welfare, which again, when you're talking about the welfare that goes directly to constituents, is primarily elderly and children. When you're talking about just getting completely rid of that, to me, that's just mean. That's just cruel.
Yeah, so
It's
let me
uncaring of the
explain.
people,
So hold on.
of all of
So
these people, of
that's not
people
an
like my
argument.
coworker. If
Well, why
he
does
had
that's
that
not
die
a- hold
with
on,
if
that
he had
being
access,
saying?
if
Hold
he
on,
had
hold on.
access to adequate
okay, you're not-
housing,
this
and
is a gish
if
galloping.
he had
Like,
access to housing at the time, then
I'll let you go for like 4 more
he
seconds.
wouldn't
This is
have
a gish
needed to
gallop.
work
Let
at
me
UPS. I think a lot of
listen.
I think what
You're
you're
not
talking
arguing
about is
against my
something
point.
that's just not.
This is
Well,
like
I'm saying I think this is a good reason for welfare in the first place, because there
But
are
that's
people
not.
like this who
Hold
are
on,
pushed
hold on.
into work.
You're not actually
talking about
arguing. You're
preferring
not
fraternal
arguing for
societies,
this.
but I just don't think that's anywhere
Listen.
near as effective.
Okay, so there you go. So that right at the end, when I pushed you, you got to an actual argument because
Well, when you
everything said
interrupted
before
me
that-
repeatedly and
everything. Yes, because you were gish galloping. You were going on and on and on about a sob story, and I
I'm
understand
so
pathos.
sorry. I'm so used to
Energeia,
that. That's
right?
such a mean
Like,
thing.
okay, yeah. So here's the problem: is that none of that is actually an argument for welfare. That is an argument that a person has a need. That is not an argument that the government.
Well, you were
is the
talking
best.
about how you like
Hold on,
talking
hold on,
directly to
hold on,
people,
hold
how
on,
you like.
hold on, hold on. So that is an argument that a person has a need. That is not an argument that the government is the best source of that need. Right at the very end, you said, I don't think fraternal societies do this better. But the data actually shows that that's not true, right? Cato did a study that showcased in the 1910s that somewhere between 10
The
to 20% of people.
1910s over. You've
Yes,
got
this
to be
was when
kidding me,
fraternal
right?
societies reigned. This is when fraternal societies reigned, right? As
Mhm,
opposed to the establishment of
I
Social
understand. You're
Security, which
telling me
was
about a society that
April.
existed like how many fucking years ago that we're supposed to apply to modern times and expect it to work. I hear you. I mean, we have billionaires
Right.
and
So
trillionaires,
hold on.
but you know,
Are you just going to
why
keep
worry
gish
about that?
galloping? Are you going to just keep gish galloping and like not making arguments? Or are you going to let me make one?
You can
Right.
tell
So
me about your 1910s.
right at the end,
question.
right. So right at the end, you said I don't think these systems work better, but the data that we do have, right? Of course, we have limited data because most
From
economic
over
data
years
didn't.
ago.
Are you done? So the
I will
data that we
moderate. That's
have.
fine. Just go ahead. Keep going.
You promise?
I mean, yeah. I mean,
So,
just go ahead.
all right. So, anyways, so from when the fraternal societies peaked in the early 20s and the late 1910s. This is the period that we're talking about. And the data showed when they were attempting to tackle this that the elderly poverty rate in most communities was somewhere between 10 to 20%. Okay. Social Security was established in 1935.
Did they
And
have
the
cars
elderly
back
poverty
then?
rate was.
Just quick question. What kind of industry existed at the time that these fraternal societies existed? Could you explain?
That is completely irrelevant. Obviously, 1910
Industry
had less
doesn't have anything to
technology.
do with the economy that you're talking about. I would love to know, like, what kind of economy
What
existed in 1910. I would love to know
I'm just going to continue
what
because
kind of
this
people
is
were
just an
being.
interjection. Like every time I give an argument, you just kind of throw out random shit, hoping to like
No, I'm
distract from the
questioning why
argument.
you're
Like
trying
this
to
is a
apply
chaotic
a
shit
study
show.
from 1910 to now, over 100 years later, when we have different people in the country, we have different industries in the country. The majority of the money that's being made by the tech sector isn't even from manufacturing, it's from data collection. So I would love to know how you plan to apply fraternal societies to modern time when all the information that you have is from over 100 years ago. I wouldn't take medicine based on research from 100 years ago. I take medicine based on research from 5 years ago, from
Yeah,
2
so
years
I'm
ago.
giving
So why should we
I'm
trust this?
giving So I'm giving a historical analysis, right, to argue against your point, which is your point is the current status quo, improved by more data, is the appropriate way to deal with these situations.
That was not my
What I'm
complete point, but that is, I do think it's better than yours. So.
Okay, so it's an accurate summation. So you interrupted me.
No,
to
it's
say
not,
that my
but I do
summation
think it is
accurate.
better than yours.
Okay, go
Okay,
ahead.
cool. So again, 1960, the poverty rate amongst the elderly had dropped to 35% from Depression era, and it does not reach parity with the fraternal societies until 1995. Right, so we have roughly 55 years before Social Security, that is this supposed magic fix, is able to reach parity with the systems that came before, that had people engaged within their community, that had been
What?
knowing knowing the people that were being helped, that people
What
were
was the
helping people because of
population at the time?
values.
Okay, what was the population at the time?
I
Do you
don't
know?
have the population
Okay, I'll look up the
on hand.
19
Well,
population. No, I think this is a necessary point. 1910
Somewhere
population of
around 50
1910 US.
million. What, 40 million, 50
92,
million?
92 million is what I'm finding here.
It depends on what
Okay,
year you're looking at.
I just wrote 1910.
Okay, cool.
That's just what I wrote. What's
How is that
the,
fucking
let's
relevant?
see what the
here's what we'll
population
do.
is
Here's what
now.
we'll do. I'll let you. Hold on.
340.
Here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. Hold on. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna let Buckaroo go. And I'm gonna
What
let her
is this?
hold on. I'm gonna let Buckaroo respond and say how it's relevant and all that good jazz. And then we're gonna give her the floor for about a minute here, and then we're gonna go to closings. And Fabian, you're gonna go first. All right, go ahead. You got 1 minute, and then Fabian.
Wait, Buckaroo, would you put a limit on anything? Do you think there should be like a personal limit, a general limit, a financial limit? Is there any limit to this welfare? Like, what do you think of that really quick?
Yeah, and include that in your answer. You got about a minute, and I guess I'll give you 30 seconds to Chai's question because Chai didn't ask 2 questions. That's fine. Go ahead, and then we're gonna go to Fabian for closings. So go ahead.
Would I put a limit on it? It depends what kind of welfare you're talking about. Would I put a limit on the welfare that's being accessed by the average person? Probably. At least if I was about to like change the welfare system tomorrow and I was about to implement something that I thought could actually be useful tomorrow, I would probably suggest something with a limit just because I think that's what the general public would prefer. And it's not like I'm trying to pay every person like $1 million a year. I think that would be ridiculous, you know. I would want, just enough, again, like I said, to help them achieve gainful employment, housing, food, education.
All right. Is that everything? You got 1 minute left. That was 30 seconds.
Oh, yes. So, uh, again, citing a study from 1910, when we had 92 million people in the United States. Now we have about 343.6 million people in the United States. Do you still think fraternal societies would be able to manage with the scope of the population now when, yeah, actually, that's my first question.
Wait, are you asking
Is
him a
that a question to me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All right,
Sorry,
well-
I didn't
Yeah.
sound questioning.
All
Yeah,
right.
sure. I think the fraternal system was a system that worked in its day and time. Our culture is different. I don't know that like a
Oh.
tripling in population is
1910.
the biggest meaningful thing. But I think that it is an example of when the free market and voluntary association allows people to fix problems in their culture and their community based off of the things that they value, as opposed to the amorphous state that is, not
As opposed to
not
voting,
actually
which we never
forced
do with
to-
our values. We never use representatives for our values. We never get offered any options on voting or on taxes. You're right. We just
I'm sure.
we have no
I'm
values.
very
represented
sure.
at all.
I know that that's a pithy remark, but I'm very sure if we weren't in a debate and we were just having a conversation, you and I guarantee you'd give me 100 different ways in which the state doesn't represent our values, in which corporations
yeah.
and wealthy elite and those, don't, like you did so even in your
I
opening
think it would
statement
be
when you argued
good
against
to-
welfare, which was my position.
Well, when I argued
think that's a silly
against
remark.
argued against prioritizing capitalist motives instead of prioritizing the people who are the ones that the government serves, the government that serves the people by printing money and distributing it so that we can participate in the economy. And
So you agree that this
I just think you're
representative
kind of-
democracy doesn't represent people or the values. So you agree with me. So your pithy remark is
No,
just
that's
a
not what I
stupid
said. What I
interruption.
said that we have a representative democracy. There are things that we could change with the welfare system. There are things we could change with different policies. I really like Matt Grunig. Grunig? I keep calling him Grunig, like the Simpsons guy. But I like some of the policies that I've read. He wrote policies for my state actually recently, so I read those and I liked them a lot. But Yeah, I mean, I
What are
think
we
there are
talking
changes to
about
be
now?
made, but I don't think
Cool,
that
you
there's
like
enough
Matt
reason.
Brunig. What does that have
I
to do
think
with
there are
anything?
changes to be made, but I don't
Hold-
think that's reason enough to completely get rid of welfare in the same way that I think there are people who commit gun crimes, but I don't think we should make all guns illegal. I think that would be wrong. And that's why I think when you say to get rid of all welfare, because there are some people who use it wrong, or maybe there are some, the state does some things kind of messy and, there are $500 here and there. I just feel like that's not enough to argue to get rid of all of the support systems for all of the children and all of the elderly people in our nation, which again is like 50% of the population.
It's not my
all right,
argument.
that's fine. That's all. That's perfect.
You
That's a
just
perfect.
you
That's
don't
hold on.
support
Hold on.
welfare.
That's a perfect segue spot. All right, that's not his argument. He's got closings. It's a good segue to closings for 3. He can explain his argument. Let me set up the thing. So here's what's gonna happen. Judges are gonna send me in a DM who they think won. We're gonna have each have 3 minutes closings. Fabian first, and then you Buckaroo. Nobody interrupt anybody during the closings. All right, and then after we're gonna put the poll up, and y'all have about 3 minutes to vote. All right, and then we'll go from there, and we'll review who won. All right, so Fabian, whenever you're ready, I'm ready. Go ahead and start. 3
Yeah,
minutes.
as I stated in my opening statement, when we are talking about money, when we're talking about the national debt, when we're talking about $37 trillion in debt, we are talking about 74% of every tax dollar, which is either some form of entitlement spending, welfare, or interest on the debt, right? That when we talk about, cutting military spending, I'm all for it, right? When you talk about, a new infrastructure bill and things of that nature, that's 26% of the budget. Like, we are a nation that is increasingly being crippled by inflation and debt, and the primary driving force of that is Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That is the primary driving force. And if we don't have honest conversations about whether or not these programs are actually helping people, and not hurting us in the long run, then we can't, then what are we doing, right? I tried to go into why I think, free market voluntary associations are better, but it seems like this debate, very quickly became chaotic, and kind of bounced around. Maybe we needed more time and we would have gotten there. I don't know. But, as I stated before, the reason I made a historical analysis talking about fraternal societies is that they did do a good job of this. In the 1920s, again, 1 in 3 men was in a fraternal society. So fraternal societies such as the Legal Order of the Moose, which had 1 in 26 men in America, over 1 million members by 1912, only had to pay 1 week's wages. And this gave them access to to care for the elderly, unemployment insurance, health insurance. They had an orphanage for people that died. And what that orphanage was able to achieve was that males that graduated from the education system of that orphanage made 70.9% more in weekly earnings than the average American male, and females made 62.5% more. I mean, there is a pathway towards, taking care of people. Just because somebody is elderly, just because somebody is sick, just because somebody is homeless, just because somebody is in need and crying out for help, does not mean that getting the government to fix it actually fixes it, or that that's the best solution. My argument is very simple, and that is that we are being bled dry, and the problem is getting worse, and our debt is increasing, and increasingly our taxes are just paying interest on the debt. And so, am I over time? I apologize.
No, you have 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. And so just because, the economic reality of the situation is that we cannot continue to do the status quo. We cannot continue to pay some corporate NGO, a bunch of money to do a study so that we can slightly change this. We are the Titanic heading for an iceberg, and the only way to solve homelessness and familial problems and the poor is to engage in free market capitalism and get the parasitic nature of the state out of this equation.
Yeah, it's sorry about that. I thought that was a known thing. 3-0, like 30. But I mean, I guess it could be.
I don't know. I thought it was white power.
No, yeah,
I
I don't know. I've always seen 3-0, whatever. But yeah, okay, but yeah, whatever. Anyway, we're gonna ignore that. We're gonna go with Buckaroo. Whenever you're ready, go ahead, start.
By the way, this is
What's
30 seconds in academic.
Yeah, in debate we usually did that, but I did that a while back, and so someone bitched at me, And so I was like, we're gonna find something else. And then I
This
was put
50 seconds.
yeah, and then I was gonna put the timer on screen, and I did that one time, and then two people bitched at me, and then I was like, so okay, nobody gets nothing now, and I'm just gonna make shit up as I go, and you're gonna like it.
It's okay.
That's what
I
we
If it
was
was
do.
a
gonna say
real
you were
academic
getting-
debate, we would be doing this. We'd be going, and it's
Yeah, so now we're gonna have Gibbsy's hand signals as I see fucking fit is what we're gonna get now, and we'll just have to figure it out from there. All right, go ahead, Buckaroo, whenever you're ready.
I will say when you said what they got from fraternities, I was wondering if you were also going to say they got one of those Flintstone cars so they could skedaddle their way over to take care of grandma. But, you know, in modern times, they wouldn't have a job or a grandma, so they certainly wouldn't have a car. So I feel like what shocks me the most out of discussions like this is a blind, almost childlike trust in whatever the market will provide. Um, when we've seen countless examples of what it looks like when corporations are left to their own devices. They are profit motivated. Understandably, they're corporations, but the government shouldn't be profit motivated because it's not a business. They produce products without demand, then create advertising campaigns to manipulate the masses into buying their products while poisoning our livestock, our dinner, and our air. They move fast and break things. Sometimes they have to. Like I said, that's the nature of working in such a competitive market. Um, but the government's in a unique position to offer funding for research that would go otherwise unlooked because they are able to take risks corporations can't afford. Out of the world's top 10 billionaires, 7 of them made their big break using technology funded by the government, or in Elon Musk's case, getting a direct loan from the government for $450 million to establish his first plant, his first Tesla plant. As a service provider to the people, it's a moral imperative to use the publicly owned economy, the public utility of money for the good of the people it serves. Money exists as a public utility, and we all require it to gain access to food, water, shelter, healthcare, and education. And because of that, I think it should be used for the public. The government is, everybody says, by the people, of the people, by the people, for the people. The same is true for money, as it is like I said, inextricably linked with the government. And just before we go, I just wanted to list a couple of the modern inventions that wouldn't have existed without government welfare. Okay, MRIs, supercomputers, microchips, closed captioning, computer simulation software, modern Goodyear tires, modern wind energy, enriched infant formula, lactose-free milk, smartphones, GPS, the internet. Exactly what we're using to interact right now wouldn't exist if it weren't for DARPA. Touch screens, Google, the kidney matching program, self-driving cars, reference to Shaky the Robot, adorable, modern upper limb prosthetics, modern lower limb prosthetics, hybrid corn, and like I said, Tesla. All of those would not exist if it were not for government welfare and the risk that the government can take when they're investing in production, in research and development. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, cool. So we're gonna put polling up chat. If you're gonna vote, it's in my it's not in my Discord. It's in my Twitch chat. For those of y'all on the other people's channels, feel free to come in here and vote. Judges, send me who y'all think won. I'm gonna run an ad and I'm gonna ponder my life. This has been a wild one. I didn't expect it to go a lot of the directions it went when I saw this pin this topic, but yeah, it was interesting.
So are you against or for corporate subsidies? Because I can't tell from your closing. Because you're for Monsanto getting tons of funding from the government for corn subsidies, and then simultaneously against corporate welfare. Like, what is going on?
You're right. I should have mentioned the corn. I just got really excited about it. I'm not gonna lie. I just saw corn that could grow a bunch of places, and I got pumped. I was like, I have to mention it.
Yeah, but, or like dwarf wheat. Is another one, like dwarf wheat that was in South America for during that time. I was like, what are you talking about?
I do like the fact that it exists. Like the fact that you can grow more of it, the fact that you can grow it in tons of places. I think that's good. I think it's good to work on crops that can be cultivated in tons of different environments and more environments. But corporate subsidies, I have complex opinions about, in the same way that I do about about financing and politics. Just that it seems so integral to America, to the state as it is, that I don't see those as like completely distinguishable. So like I do take issue with it, but I wouldn't say the way to resolve that issue is just to get rid of all welfare.
Right, but the thing is it's just like I agree we should get rid of corporate welfare. You kept bringing it up. I just don't understand why you would bring up like because you're essentially
Well, because
saying
I wanted to emphasize the
I'm
fact.
right.
Well, no, because I wanted to emphasize the fact that these corporations are profit motivated. They're not people motivated. This is why I mentioned that they are not pro-social. They are anti-social. They do not care about the public. They consider us livestock. They consider us guinea pigs sometimes. They don't give a fuck.
Right, but that's
And
my
so,
position.
but my
That's my
point
position.
is, I would never trust a profit motivated company with my life. I would never trust.
So,
I would never trust it with
obviously this
access to
isn't
food
the
and
debate.
healthcare or property. You know.
Obviously the debate is over, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The
We're voting now.
libertarian perspective, the libertarian perspective on this is like,
We
and
got
there's
20
a great
seconds of voting
article.
left in mine. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's a great article you can read by Hans Hermann Hoppe, which is Austrian class analysis and Marxist class analysis. And so the idea here is, the utilization of the state. But basically, corporations can make money in one of two ways. The first way is they can provide a good or service either of higher quality or lower price, right? Like to people, right? In a competitive market. And the other way that they can do it is that they can ask the government for regulations that price out competition or for money. Right. And so like the libertarians completely and unanimously agree that the latter should be abolished, but that means abolishing welfare. That means abolishing, a ton of, corporate lobbied regulations that help out, big companies, but end up harming smaller businesses. And so the only other way that they're left without those regulations is to provide a good or service of either higher quality or of lower price than their competitors. And we should all want that, right? Like, as you said, I like living in a world where this corn can be mass produced and it's cheaper, right? So it's like, yeah, I agree with you. I want to get rid of that incentive of the corporation to make money and only see us as livestock. That's what happens when they use the state. That's what happens when socialism intervenes. But when the market is, left to its own devices, the only thing that they can do to make money is to make your life better.
All right.
That's the only way to make money.
So voting's done here. I got the voting. So the chat vote is with we got a what is it? Hold on. Let me add these last two. I mean, I think it matters. It looks like it's 8-5. Fabian's got the chat vote. All right, so we're gonna go to the judges now. All right, so what the judges? We're gonna start with one judge. Tell me who you voted for and why, and then we're gonna go to the second judge. So we'll start with Chai. Go ahead. Who do you think won and why?
I am more in the middle when it comes to my views. I lean a little more right. I don't believe in getting rid of it entirely, but I was looking for some kind of middle ground, certain answers, and overall, I'm happier with what Fabian said today. I feel like even though I lean more with what he's saying, you could have attacked him in different ways, which would have been more effective for you. But I feel like Chad is a little right. It came off as a little more rude and not maybe like it came very vibey.
I will say I don't read chat at all. So
came
if
very
Chat's talking to me,
vibey
I don't know.
I would not read the chat if I was a debater.
And
of
I
any of these.
genuinely
They don't know.
I
care
just don't
for the
care. I just
well-being of
really don't
others. I want to give them money, but Fabian makes me feel like because my money goes to paying for welfare, that someday I might end up on welfare. And I don't want to be on welfare because I'm paying for other people to be on welfare. That doesn't make sense.
Okay. All
So Fabian wins, in my opinion.
Not all of your money goes to welfare.
So, and I guess it's that's 2-1 with the chat and Chai. But go ahead, Ika. Who won? Who do you think won and why?
Okay, my irrelevant vote coming on.
Yeah, Mr. Irrelevant.
Right. So 3 sections of the flow. We've got your constructive speeches, you've got your rebuttal speeches, which are right here, and then you get your closing speeches. At first, I thought the first thing I thought was, okay, this divides up into a framework debate and then to the internal critique debate. But then really the conversation really moves towards the internal critique a lot. Probably the most relevant argument on the framework side is this argument as to whether or not democracy is the equivalent of slavery, but it kind of moves away from that really fast. But for Buckaroo to have won that framework debate, I'd have to hear some sort of reason why, like the sort of the axioms that Fabian is assuming like aren't valid, or like, is it utilitarianism? Like, what is the alternative to that?
What did
But
you? What do you mean?
so for instance, when he's saying based on principle, even if you have 100% solvency with welfare, he says he'd still be against it because he believes it's a violation of rights. Right.
Mhm.
That's where that you started to move in that direction with the whole like slavery versus democracy thing, right? And the coins. But it becomes irrelevant later on because you guys stop talking about that entirely, and then it entirely becomes, in fact, almost all of Fabian's closing statements were about voluntary associations and the solvency he says we get from those, and that's where I have to look at what we in academic debate we call an impact calculus as to who's like claiming the most solvency. And I think your best arguments on that front early on were the phone, employment, shoes. I'd like to have seen that expanded a lot more because now we're talking about forms of welfare that actually help people increase their productivity over time. But then I don't get much
Like
more of
welfare in general, which does on paper increase
yeah,
productivity.
yeah, and the list you give at the end was great. I'd like to have heard that a little bit earlier. That big list of things that when government
I
invests in them, they have
yeah,
really big payoffs. And also the other time was about the man with the son who has cancer or whatever. That had some impact, right? But then uh, his argument, though, is that the benefits of welfare are displaced by what's lost in the status quo ante, which in his case was the large systems and all the other things that he was talking about. Now, personally, I don't buy all that stuff, right? But I needed to hear specific reasons why there's no solvency there, and that what's getting displaced isn't potentially worth more than what we're getting out of it. And I don't I don't hear that. I mean, maybe it would have required looking up like some statistics on the matter, or I understand that your claim is that the statistics are so old that it's kind of useless to consider those things. But I'd like to have heard like
So yeah, to
affirmative
build
reasons.
a model based off of 1910 statistics just doesn't seem
Yeah,
like
no, I agree.
a particularly valid
No, I
position,
agree,
which is why I thought it was so obviously wrong. Um,
yeah,
but
and here's what I'd like to have heard, because when
mm,
I think about 1910 and in terms of what the solvency brings, right? I think of the biggest ticket items in the medical care system, for instance, because he's talking about how at the very beginning he talked about how healthcare was too cheap, so we have to make it more expensive. But those
mhm.
expensive things are things like chemo, immunotherapy, heart surgery, stents, and all of that. And those are things that just simply weren't available in 1910. And then lifespan, was about 50 back then. It's about 80 now. Those are things that I think would have more like on a one-to-one addressed that impact calculus. But I can't make those arguments on your behalf, right? So I have no choice at that point but to at least make it a coin flip as to whether or not the large system provided things that we would have lost. Also, technology might have advanced. I mean, who knows? But those are arguments that weren't made so that I couldn't vote on them. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
of
I
course.
had to vote for Fabian.
Yeah,
All right.
there was like so much. I genuinely thought this was such a long debate. So when I found out it was like a couple small sections, I was like, oh shit. Like I was preparing for something that was like 2 hours. I had like, yeah, so
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
I have this structured like in
I
tournament,
didn't
like
have the
kind of like
timing down.
regulars.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of have this structure like like a semi like formal style. So it's like we can plug it in for tournaments. We can plug in like two debates, like the same like 2 hour span, 2.5 hour span.
I
So I
tried to
try.
steer it back with some of my questions,
Yeah,
like back
I
to
try
what
to
we
keep it
did
Yeah.
to like a pretty
all
quick
I mean,
like time schedule.
I do like it, but yeah,
Mhm.
I
Uh,
definitely just wasn't
well,
prepared for the
well,
time.
on that note, this is a perfect ending because this was actually exactly the amount of time I wanted to hit exactly an hour 50, 16 minutes, and like 20 seconds, I think was what my timing was. So I'm 1 minute away from my goal of getting this down to an hour 15 minute like little things. So I'm pretty pleased with not counting the post critique and the voting. But yeah, so I'm pretty happy. So we're gonna end it there. Fabian moves to 3-0, and now he qualifies for the Contender series, which is gonna be the start of the regular season. I need 3 more people to get 3 wins. What we're gonna do, I think, is we're gonna have is a big trophy, and I'm gonna have
Nice.
people's names engraved on it when they win the championship thing at the end. I was gonna do a belt, but I've been in the leagues with the belt, and that works good until like someone like declares a value and ships it and turns the whole thing. So I think we're gonna go with that. Probably towards the end of June is the goal. Is when I'm gonna probably order some kind of trophy. We're gonna go from there.
You gotta make sure it's not in China, or you're gonna be paying so much for it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go down to the local guys and have them make me one. And I found some pretty cool ones. They're surprisingly pretty reasonable for some pretty crazy trophies. So we'll see what I can do.
Oh my God, Gibbs, it's over.
It is
Can we play
over.
Games?
Yeah,
Oh my
so,
God.
calm
Can
down
we play
there.
Games now?
Calm down
I
there.
just
Hold
wanna
on.
play games.
Yeah, that's
Can we
let me-
play League?
Yeah,
Can we play
yes,
Fortnite?
yes, Chai,
Can we
relax,
hold hands?
relax. One
Okay.
second. Just calm down. Calm down. I gotta do my little
Oh,
spiel
shit.
here. Anyway, yes, Fabian, give an outro as a winner. Buckaroo's gone, I guess.
Wait, no, I want to give an outro before Fabian leaves.
Uh,
Thank you so much for coming on the debate, even though you missed it the first time. I should listen to what you say more because you actually said some interesting things today, and usually I just tune you out. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, Fabian, go ahead and give an outro.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Fabian Liberty. Just Google Fabian Liberty, primarily on YouTube and X. Yeah, I had a great time. It was fun. Chaotic but fun.
Yeah, always something. Every one of these is very different. I'll say every one is extremely different than the one before.
Boy, stop fucking simping for Chai in the chat. Stop that shit.
Yeah, it's,
No. It's okay when they sim for me in your chat, just not in my chat with your name attached to it. I'd love your chat to just be full of how hot I am when I'm not there. Every stream, just talk about how great I am. Please. Just not in my
gonna
chat with his name attached.
And iCal gives an outro
I
here.
have to make something for the stream deck.
Oh, I don't think my intro would have anything that my intro didn't already have, but debate coach out of Texas. I'm on a few panels here and there. Yeah.
And Buckaroo, we all love her. She did that fast. But we're gonna be rating into someone who's gonna be making an appearance tomorrow on our women's panel as a new person that's gonna be joining us, schedule permitting, because I think they're like on call for some kind of fire department thing. So I don't know.
You're missing somebody. I'll identify as a woman for a day if you want.
Yeah, that would be something. We'll see. But we're rating out to him. We should see Chai.
Get my
and
daughter
Buckaroo
to
and all
paint my
that.
nails.
There you go. We had on one of those Prime panels, the makeup panel. I had them do my makeup
I
while they
still
were.
can't get some of this black fucking shit off my nails.
But all right,
Did
on
you
that
just
note,
do
guys.
black or checkered?
Bye, everybody.
Checkered
Thanks for being
blue.
here. It's been fun. All right, guys. That was a good one. Thank y'all so much for being a part. You moved to 3-0 there. Good job. And it's a good debut. That was for debate, Buckaroo.
Right.
All right, guys. I'll talk to y'all later.
We can play Fortnite. Yeah.
All right, peace.
Sniping those double doors.
I just moved those other
Deuces.
rooms, so it's not
Deuces.
awkward.
Let's fucking go! Let's
Hey.
fucking go.
Yeah, how you doing?
What are you doing right now?
Yeah, I am
We are not doing too well. On
rating out here.
You know what? We're fucking here. We're out here doing the best.
Yeah.
we can. How's your stream?
And
What's the song going? Not this song. Yeah, this one's a good one. This one's a good one. Thank you so much.
all right, I'm gonna do
Living
that.
the fucking dream. Welcome in. I'm Joe.
Okay, so yeah, what are you doing? How you doing? Are you going to bed?
Nothing, just wanted to.
No bed? No bed for
Maybe
Chai?
play. Oh, I guess it is like 11:30 now, huh? It's pretty late for me.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, dude, do I go to bed now? That's like really lame. Like all I did was sit here for like the last, I don't know,
Yeah, so you want to play a game? Is that what you're saying?
like really lame. Yeah, like I don't know. Like I thought maybe
You want to
we
play a
could,
Fortnite
play
game? Is that what you
one.
want to do?
I don't know, Gibbs. If it's not updated, it's like not even worth it, I guess. So I guess I could check.
Yeah, you check, and then you tell me. I'll do that, or something else. Garfield, what do you think of all this bullshit?